Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we should start. So in the last lecture, we talked about the uninformative priors, right? So what are uninformative priors? Why should we invent the so-called uninformative priors? Why should we care about that?
So there are priors that do not affect the posterior in a significant way.
Yeah, exactly. And why we don't want our prior to significantly affect the posterior?
Because we want to depend on the observed data, sometimes rather than prior assumptions on the data.
Yeah, great, yeah. This is from the argument between Bayesian guys and frequentist, right? So Bayesian always puts some distribution under anything we care about, right? So, and then frequentists just say, okay, quantified quantity of interest is not some random variable, it's just some constant value where you don't know, right? What's the motivation? How do you justify that? You're gonna remove any prior preferences, your subjective beliefs under those variables or parameters we're interested in. And then Bayesian guys says I can do objective Bayesian. I don't want to do subjective Bayesian. I want to do objective Bayesian. How to reflect objectiveness? That is, I do not want my prior to affect the posterior too much. Actually, the less influence of my prior on the posterior, better. Right? That's the motivation of the uninformative prior. And we start with the most intuitive uninformative prior is uniform prior distribution. Right? It's quite intuitive because not that we should say we want it does not contain information or less informative. Why not just assume everyone has the same chance to be taken, right? Each possible value has the same chance to be taken. And it turns out it works on some scenario, but doesn't work on another scenario. So I want you to recall like, what problems with uniform distribution as the uninformative prior.
We integrated it regard term that was independent.
Yeah, that's the first issue that if your random variable is on bounded domain, you're not gonna have a valid uniform distribution because you cannot normalize it. You do the integration, it will diverge, right? So, but as long as it can end up with a valid posterior distribution, that's fine. That's fine. And we just call it improper prior as long as your posterior is proper. But what's the other issue for using uniform distribution as a prior, uninformative prior?
Of course, the posterior does not represent the property of the data. Well, say, well, in a binomial example, if your theta equals to half, then at this point your data is very less sensitive to the priors, but uniform distribution cannot represent this property.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. But the most straightforward example is that when I do some transformation of the random variables, then it will no longer be informative. Right? There's something we do not want. Say if I take square of your uniform random variable, well, definitely your distribution will change, will be distorted, or be informative. So that's something we do not want. And then we realize that actually the choice of uninformative prior depends on the properties of the likelihood. So if your likelihood exhibits some properties, I want my uninformative prior to be consistent with the likelihood. In that way, we can minimize the influence of your prior on the posterior. To see this point, we can imagine that if your prior behaves drastically different from the likelihood, now obviously it will quite influence the posterior, right? On the other hand, if your prior behaves almost the same as the likelihood, then taking it away or including will has little effect on the posterior. So the reasoning or rationale is here. So the idea is that I want to look at the specific data likelihood I choose. I want to say what kind of properties it reflects, and then I want to design my uninformative prior to obey that properties. Then we look into like two typical properties for likelihoods. One is called a shift invariance, and the other is called skew invariance, right? So shift invariance is that like if I move both the parameters of my likelihood and the random observations by the same amount distance, it will not change. And based on that property, we construct my uninformative prior. I have required that in prior domain, when I shift my random variable in some interval to another interval, it won't change the probability mass. When we use that constraint, we derive that our uninformative prior will be uniform distribution. So you can see there indeed is some rationale of using uniform distribution as an uniform part, although it is not like universally good, right? It also has some other issues. Right? And another property we discussed is called skew invariance. Skew invariance means that if I just skew both the parameters and the random observations, the likelihood by the same constant, say C, your likelihood does not change. We'll give an example, like if I want to know the distribution of how many miles I can drive my car. I don't want it changes a lot when I switch from miles to kilometers. That doesn't make sense. If I want to measure my height, I don't want maybe shorter when I use meters. Of course, if I can be taller, probably I will consider to use meters. So to obey the skew invariance in prior domain, again, we require our probability mass of the prior distribution in some interval will not change after we skew the interval by the same constant. Then we derive that the uniformity prior will be proportional to the inverse of the random variable. So that actually leads to a more general question. That is, so shift invariance and skew invariance are just two types of transformations, right? So naturally, one asks, is there any uniformity prior which is invariant to arbitrary transformations? That leads to the Jeffreys prior, which we discussed in the last few minutes in the last lecture, right, on Tuesday. So definition of Jeffreys prior, so just review it. It is the square root of the determinant of the Fisher information matrix. And what is the definition of Fisher information matrix? It is the negative expectation over the second derivative of the log likelihood over theta. Right? So the expectation is taken with respect to the distribution of x given theta. So it's not distribution of theta. Don't confuse at this point. It's the distribution of x controlled by theta. This is called Fisher information matrix. Then we take expectation, we get this is the second derivative, and then the expectation we get Fisher information matrix and calculate determinant, and then take square root. This is our Jeffreys part, and again, this is the improper part. So that means we only require it's proportional to that, because if you integrate out, it will diverge. And then we look at an example of Jeffreys part, that is binomial distribution. This is the likelihood, and we can compute to get the Jeffreys part of theta. We can compute the log likelihood and take the second derivatives and take the expectation, all those stuff. So we have walk through Tuesday. And finally, your Jeffreys part turns out to be a beta distribution, half and half. And we have looked into the curve of your part, the Jeffreys part, which is this blue curve, which is quite far away from our more intuitive, more comfortable flat prior, which is beta 1, 1, right? And then we explain why this out curve is more reasonable to serve as an uniformity prior.
Are there times where your log likelihood doesn't have a second derivative and like you cannot use Jeffreys prior in that scenario?
Yeah, it's possible. That means you're just a constant. But if it is 0, then the Jeffreys prior is not. I can say what should I say? It's not valid. There won't be any Jeffreys prior for that. But here we can see this Jeffreys prior is actually a proper prior because it's beta distribution. Right? So I can only conclude that most cases it is improper prior, but some special cases could be proper prior. And we explain the rationale why this strange blue curve will takes its role of being uninformative part. The reason is that we want our uninformative part to behave consistently with the likelihood, right? So how is this consistently reflected? We look into the different values of the data, right? So we know when data takes half, data likelihood won't change for arbitrary observations x. With that being said, data will take least effect on the posterior distribution when data is half. And when we look at this Jeffreys part, we find that when data takes half, it also takes minimum, meaning that in the same time, it also has the least effect on the posterior distribution, right? And on the other cases, when data approaches 0 or 1, we know that the data likelihood will change dramatically when x changes. That means the data is close to 0 and 1, it has the largest impact on the posterior distribution. To be consistent, we can say, okay, when theta is Jeffrey part approaches with 2 ends, it also has a large impact. Then when theta approaches to the middle, right? That's how the prior is consistent with the data effect, such that it diminishes its effect on the posterior distribution. So any questions so far? So just review what we have walked through at last in the end of our last lecture. Because at that time, I bet most of you just think about where I go to dinner. Right? So just to ensure everybody sufficiently refresh their mind. Right? So now, let us look at some theoretical results. As we just mentioned, Jeffreys part is good at its invariance to any translation, right? So how do we see that point? Let us just consider a general translation. Say I transform theta to another variable, phi, through this mapping h, so phi is h here, right? So, and then I want to construct the Jeffreys part over phi. And also, in addition to that, if I directly calculate phi according to this transformation, how do I do that? If we assume theta follows the Jeffreys part, or Jeffreys distribution, right? How do I compute the distribution for phi? And yeah. You just use the formula you have used your homework theory, right? So because theta follows some Jeffreys part, and in order to compute the distribution of phi, you use the formula, right? So it is a density of theta multiplied with the absolute value of d theta over d phi, right? Then you get the distribution of phi. And if this distribution is also a Jeffreys part, that means this constellation is invariant to Jeffreys part, right? That means if you just perform arbitrary transformation of your theta, you still end up with a Jeffreys distribution. So this is the idea. So now let us check. Right? Let's first directly construct the Jeffreys part over phi, and then we use this transformation formula to compute the distribution of phi and see whether they match. If they're the same, okay, we finish our proof. Does it make sense? Okay, so to construct the Jeffreys bar or phi, according to the definition, we need to compute the square root of the determinant of the picture information matrix. And here we only consider the scalar case, but for the vector case, we follow almost exactly the same thing. Except that you need to take into account the matrix vector size match. The other things remain the same, right? So we need to first compute the feature information matrix, right? So the feature information matrix is negative expectation of the second derivative of data likelihood over phi, right? And because we can represent data in terms of phi, so we can also represent the log likelihood of the data in terms of phi. But essentially they are the same. So how do we compute that? Here we should utilize the chain rule. Right? So I include a new probably so we need to take a look at the second derivative of the log likelihood parameterized by phi over d phi squared, right? So this is essentially volume. We're gonna create a new page. So we have sufficient space. So this is something we're looking at, right? The second derivative of the log likelihood over d phi squared. So to calculate this, we need to realize that this is essentially a gradient or derivative. Derivative of derivative. Is it right? Everybody's comfortable, right? So you can just consider this one is another function of phi, right? So it's just di phi over d phi. So we got di phi over d phi. So to derive this, we can use chain rule. We can first take the derivative over theta, and then take the derivative of theta over d phi. Right? So d f phi over theta times d theta over d phi. Right? Is everybody comfortable? So the question is, how do we compute this? The derivative of f theta over d theta. So now we need to write down the f theta, which is the first derivative of the log likelihood represented by phi over d phi, and this over d theta. Right? And how can we do that? So we can first look at the f phi, right? So f phi is this, but we can re-represent f phi as, again, use chain rule. Right? It's nothing but just divide d theta and multiply with d theta. And now we want to calculate d f phi over d theta. And how do we do that? That's the rule to the derivative over product, right? So for any product, say dxy over d theta, you're going to represent it as a dx over d theta times y plus x times dy over d theta, right? It's just the rule. And then we can apply here, which is we need first to calculate the derivative of this, right? So I wouldn't copy it, just times d theta over y plus this one, just copy it. Right? Everybody is comfortable? So let us look at this term. So what's this term? So first, now that we are taking derivative of d theta over d theta again, right? So likelihood can be re-represented by in terms of theta. So the first term is essentially the second derivative of log likelihood represented by theta and over d theta squared, right? Multiplying with this d theta over d theta. And how about the second one? The second one is not obvious because this term seems a bit odd. Note that d theta and d theta cannot cancel. This is not like ordinary dividing and multiplying operation. Right? So basically, d theta over d phi is kind of function of phi. You need to take derivative of d theta. This is not that simple, but we can use the chain rule again. That means I can. This one is d theta over d phi over d theta times d theta over d phi. Right? Oh, sorry. It's not d theta. It's over d phi times d phi over d theta. Does it make sense? Because this is the numerator that is taken derivative is function of phi, right? If you take function of phi over another different variable, it's kind of tricky. And now I take the derivative again over phi, but then multiply d phi over d theta. And then this becomes the second derivative of theta over d phi squared. And then multiply this d phi over d theta. Right? Does it make sense? This is just a basic calculus, right? That you need to practice, otherwise you're gonna forget. And then you multiply with the first derivative of log likelihood over d theta. This is the second term. And it has this first term and this second term. Right? And now you get this part, d at phi over d theta. And what's next step? Next step, just multiplying d theta over d phi into these two terms. Okay. So if you multiply d theta over d phi into these two terms for the first term, you see there is another d theta over d phi. So you take the square here, right? And you multiply d theta over d phi over the second term. What do you observe? It cancels, right? So we have the last term, d theta over d phi, d phi over d theta, and then you multiply with d theta over d phi. So it's just cancel, right? So now you have your second derivative of the log likelihood represented by phi over d phi squared is this. That's here. Right. Of course, we need to take the expectation and take negative outside. Does it make sense? Yeah, I highly recommend you to follow the derivations later. I intentionally write down the details because I know someone, when they derive, they will be confused here how those terms are cancelled. And then let us look at this term, these two terms, right? When we take expectation, we're taking expectation with respect to x. So theta is considered as a constant. That means we just take expectation for this and take expectation for this, right? And the interesting observation is that the expectation of the first derivative of the log likelihood or d theta is simply 0. So how can we see this point? So first, for absolute theta, we have this integral over the density of x to the theta is 1, right? And now we take the derivative of this integral. What can we get? What can we get? This is a constant, right? So you take a derivative of this integral is simply 0. But when we take derivative of this integral, we said before we can switch the integration and derivative, right? We can move the derivative into the integrand. So move this inside, we have a d density over d theta times dx, right? And we intentionally multiply a p x over theta by density divided by density. And why should we do that? I will say in a minute, right? So now we just merge this d density over d theta multiplying with the inverse of the density multiplying with this density again and integrate with dx, right? So we can observe this part is derivative log likelihood over d theta. Can I see this point? Why? Why these two are the same? Yeah, I've heard, right? This is just a chain rule, right? The derivative of log whatever is you need first to take the inverse of the thing inside log and then take the derivative of the remaining, right? So derivative of log density, you need first take the inverse of density and then take the derivative of the density, right? This is dc. This is dc. So now we're done with this. And then in the outside, you multiply with density and doing integration over dx. And what does this mean? Expectation, right? Because this is a density, right? It's probability density, and this is some function you're gonna integrate with your probability density, right? You marginalize with your probability density. So the expectation of the first derivative of your log likelihood over d theta, and which we know is 0. So now we're going to the results we have just obtained, right? We have two terms inside expectation. One is a second order derivative of the log density over d theta squared times the square of the d theta over d phi. And second one is this expectation of the first derivative of the log likelihood over d theta multiplied with this second derivative. But we know when we take the expectation over this, it's simply 0. So the remaining thing will be this. And from this term, we immediately get the expectation of the second derivative of log likelihood or d theta squared and take negative. It is the feature information matrix over theta, or the original random variable theta. Then you multiply the square of the derivative of d theta over d phi. This results in the feature information matrix for phi, right? And now to construct Jeffreys bar, we just take square root over this feature information matrix back here. It's just here, just take square root. Since you take square root, it becomes the square root of the feature information matrix for theta. I just said it's a feature information, it's not a feature information matrix because it's just scalar. And then times this square, right? If you take the square root, it becomes absolute value of d theta over d phi. So what can we observe from this relationship? So we know our Jeffreys bar or phi is just the square root of the feature information for theta times the absolute value of the derivative of theta over d phi. So what does this relationship reflect or imply? We can go back to say previously we mentioned that if we just do the variable transformation, right, we know the probability of theta is a Jeffreys bar. And I want to know if I do transformation of theta, what is the probability of transformation? How can we calculate that transformation? How can we calculate it? Just multiply your probability of the original variable times the absolute value of the derivative of the original variable over the transform variable. It is the density of the transform variable, right? So we can see now it is consistent, right? So that means after your transformation, the probability of the transform from the variable still follows the Jeffreys bar distribution, right? So we can say the actual transformation is invariant to Jeffreys bar. So we can say, like for actual transformation from the variable phi, when we directly construct the Jeffreys bar over that, we get this, right? And when we do not care what is the bar we want to construct, we just derive the distribution for the transfer of the variable phi. In terms of the theta, we also obtain the same form. So they are same, meaning that, okay, actually, when the variable transformation won't change the distribution, the Jeffreys bar distribution. Does it make sense? Any question?
Is this conclusion consistent with shifting by the scaling errors?
Yeah. So first and foremost, is everyone happy with this? I see a lot of you like keep nodding, but the face looks not very comfortable. But in general, do you follow this logic? If you do not like follow the details, that's fine. I just give you a lead, and later we will try to replicate my derivation you'll get into the details. Does it make sense? So here are two examples of Jeffreys likelihood. Jeffreys bar. So we can show for Gaussian likelihood, if we want to construct the Jeffreys bar over the mean parameters and construct Jeffreys bar over standard deviation parameters, ends up with uniform distribution and inverse of the standard deviation. So now we can say it's actually consistent with the previous shift invariance and skew invariance property we mentioned, right? Why? Because Jeffreys bar is so general, it adapts to arbitrary transformations. So when your likelihood has shift invariance, then it turns out it obeys shift invariance. And if it has the skew invariance, it will adapt to the skew invariance. Right? And how do you derive this limit SL exercise? And I will suggest you to do that because when I say I leave it as an exercise, very probably I will leave it as a homework. So Jeffreys bar is usually not conjugate. Sometimes it might coincide with conjugate parts, but in general it won't be conjugated. And for example, if you choose Jeffreys bar over mu and sigma for the Gaussian likelihood, as we just mentioned, the posterior mu will be a student peak distribution. It's not Gaussian. It's not Jeffrey distribution at all. So, and in some cases, if you apply Jeffreys bar over the parameters and multiply with likelihood, it might not be analytical for you to compute the posterior distribution. So that means Jeffreys bar won't guarantee the same computational benefit as in conjugate bar. Another point we should be aware is that Jeffreys bar really sounds good for being an uninformative bar. At the same time, it might sacrifice other good properties. For example, Jeffreys bar usually works well for single parameters, but not for models with multi-dimensional parameters. And its bad properties, including like full convergence properties, not very reasonable estimates, and blah blah blah. So you can say there's no free lunch. Right? You have you're good, you're perfect in one aspect, you might perform badly in another aspect. So to address this problem, people often propose another type of uninformative bars. It's called reference bars. So reference bars define the uninformative bar in another way. So basically it says if an uninformative bar is a function, remember probability density always functions. We'll consider as a function that maximizes some measure of distance of divergence between the posterior and the bar when the data observations are made. So you can explain the uninformative meaning in another aspect, right? So how do I say the prior has least effect on the posterior when the prior and posterior are very far away? How does it to make the priors and posterior far away? It is data likelihood. In other words, that means that the data likelihood takes the important role to push the posterior very far away. It is data likelihood that infects the posterior at most degree, the largest degree. Does it make sense? Okay. So this is actually another way to define the uninformative bar. And then, based on this definition, you can choose whatever divergence or distance measure to measure the difference between the prior and posterior. A commonly used measure is the so-called KL divergence. We have covered this in the last week. Right? KL divergence between the posterior and the prior. Remember, KL divergence is asymmetric. That means KL divergence between the prior and posterior won't be the same. And we can try to maximize the KL divergence between the posterior and the prior with respect to prior, such that I can find out the best prior, right? But at the same time, we need to consider all possible cases of the observations T. That's why usually we need to take expectation of the KL divergence, because this KL divergence is determined by the specific choice of T, right? Specific value of T, specific observation. And now, if we want to find in general what is the best reference prior, we need to consider all possible values that T can take. That's why we need to take the expectation over the scale divergence, and then we maximize this expectation to find out the best prior that is furthest from the posterior. And it turns out that this expectation of scale divergence is simply the mutual information between the latent random variable theta and your observable random variable t. That's about like reference bars. So we won't give like some detailed example about reference bars, just to let you know another way to define unquantity bar. And it looks like this is more like quantitative, right? Because I can measure how far away from the prior to the posterior. And this difference can be used to quantify how uninformative your prior is. Right? So previously, when we talk about Jeffrey's prior, when we talk about like shift invariance and skew invariance, we just say, okay, I want them to be consistent, behave consistent with likelihood, but how consistent? We don't have like quantitative metric. But here, if we use reference prior, we have some metric. That is the distance between the prior and posterior. The larger the distance between the posterior and prior, the more important the data likelihood takes the role. If the data likelihood doesn't affect the posterior so much, you can imagine the prior and posterior should be quite close. Everybody feels comfortable? Any question? Okay. So now let us switch to another topic, the concept for exchangeability and the associated definitive theory. So to introduce the concept of exchangeability, we need to review a little bit Bayesian versus frequency, right? So given distribution P of x, given data, which is governed by our product of data, from frequency point of view, we will believe data is some kind of objective constant without any randomness, and I just want to estimate from a sequence of IID samples, x1 to xn, right? So IID means independent, identically distributed samples, right? I want to estimate, say, from maximal likelihood estimation or map estimation, whatever. And then from Bayesian point of view, I believe data is some latent random variable. The only difference between theta and x is that I observed x, but I cannot observe theta. And then I assume those observations are first sampled from those observations sampled following a hierarchical structure or hierarchical procedure. That is, we'll first sample data from some prior distribution. Then given data, I sample those observations x1, xn. That's the Bayesian point of view. So there's no like who is right, who is wrong. Problem is more like a philosophical choice, right? I like to think in that way. And another group of people like frequentists will think, I believe the truth is that the God won't roll the dice. Right? There exists, it won't jump around, right? It's just stay there, and we need us to probe it and to find it. And from Bayesian point of view, I think, okay, it's just some random machine, and God is always gambling and rolling dice, and I just want to know how likely the God will roll the dice, right? In what kind of range. So this sounds more like a philosophy choice, but the question is that can we find out some justification for this model of philosophy? Even part of it should be more than should be better, right? So the exciting thing is that there's a leading case that comes out of the concept of exchangeability. So what is exchangeability? It's just assumption of the drawn distribution for a set of random variables. So most commonly used assumptions for the distribution of random variables are IID. So everyone knows that, right? Given, suppose we have observed a set of random variables x1 and xn, I simply assume they're independent, identical distributed, so their joint probability is just the product of the marginal probability over each random variable, right?
Can you define exchangeability again? Just like quickly,
No, I haven't defined it yet. Yeah, I just first state the IID. But this assumption is quite convenient, but it may not be reasonable in many problems, like weather conditions, right? You cannot assume that today's weather is totally independent from tomorrow's weather, right? And stock prices, you cannot assume like the stock prices is different from, is totally independent from yesterday's stock prices, right? And also like precipitation, disease rate, like you cannot assume that precipitation in Salt Lake City is totally independent of the of that in like Holiday or Muley, whatever. Right? So to deal with those dependent random variables, what kind of assumptions can we take? Other than IID. IID is no longer a problem. And we can choose a much weaker assumption. It's called exchangeability. So here's the definition of exchangeability. We start with the finite number of random variables. So for n random variables, an arbitrary computation, pi 1 to pi n. So pi 1 just means, okay, what is the original item before the computation? Say, if my original is just a natural element like 1, 2, 3, right? So after some random permutation, like 3, 1, 2, right? So pi 1 is going to be 3, and pi 2 is 1, and pi 3 is 2. So that's the definition of the pi. So if n random variables under arbitrary computation, the drawn distribution of the sequence of the random variables won't change. This is called a finite exchangeability. So, but don't try to memorize this, because I was very confused by this definition when I first studied this concept. And those, I don't know who wrote this definition. It's really, really confusing and really responsive. They're trying to set up understanding barrier. Right? So this is a true definition of the exchangeability. And forget about this. It just says for arbitrary set of values, your n random variables can take, see, x1 to xn. Those are values, not random variables. The density of x1 taking this value, small x1, x2 taking small x2, until xn taking small xn, is equal to when we shuffle the values. We get x pi 1, x pi 2 to x pi, but the density won't change. The density is still the density that x1 equals to the x pi 1, some permutated item, and x2 equals x pi 2 until xn equals x pi n are exactly the same. Is it clear? Not clear? Let us look at this example. In the bottom. Okay. Suppose I have a 1, 2, 3, right? So if this x1, x2, x3 are finite exchangeable, that means you can random permutate. You can permutate 1 to 3 into arbitrary order, so their density won't change. X1 equals to 1, X2 equals 2, X3 equals to 3. This probability is exactly the same as X1 equals to 2, X2 equals 3, X3 equals 1. And exactly the same as X1 equals 3, X2 equals 1, X3 equals to 2.
So this is over the joint probability.
Yeah, over joint probability.
But like the probability of x1 equals to 3 is not equal to the probability of x1 equal to 2.
No,
Okay.
no, there's no assumption on
When
that.
they're combined.
Yeah, exchangeability is only talking about like the joint probability over a sequence of random variables. We never make any assumption about marginal probabilities. It's different from ID. But essentially, ID is talking about a sequence of random variables as well. Does it make sense now? So basically, you can imagine like your joint density function, right? P x1 to xn, right? If you draw the density function, you can find out the contour. Right? The contour means a curve that your density keeps the same value. So all those permutations stay in the contour. Permutation of the inputs will stay in the contour. Does it make sense? This is called symmetry. That means you can do the arbitrary permutation over the values your random variables can take, but the density won't change. Does it make sense?
How is this any different than IID assumption?
Yeah, that's something I want you guys to think about. So let us first define. This is finite exchangeability, right? Then we can go to the infinite exchangeability. So we can define exchangeability over an infinite sequence of random variables. x1, x2 to x infinity. We say an infinite sequence of random variables is exchangeable if the arbitrary finite number n, the first n random variables, they are finite exchangeable. Then we say this infinite sequence of random variables is exchangeable. It's just a trivial extension, right? Here, Sn includes all possible permutations. And remember, this must hold for arbitrary permutation, arbitrary values, arbitrary set of values that those random variables possibly take. So now we come to a question. If I know a sequence of random variables are IID, are they exchangeable? Obviously, yes, right? If you write down the joint probability, it's just px1, px2, pxn, right? And they are IID and identically distributed. You just swap the values that each x1 takes. It won't change this product, right? But does it hold reversely? I give the answer. The answer is no, right? Any question?
So would it be kind of like saying the probability that it's cloudy today and sunny tomorrow is equal to the probability that it's sunny today and cloudy tomorrow?
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that its probability of sunny today is independent if it's cloudy tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Very good explanation. Although this is not, I mean, exchangeability also is not very appropriate for matter condition.
Yeah, that's
right?
probably
But,
true.
but this is a good example. I would like to write down. So if we assume like weather conditions are exchangeable, although this is not true, right? So what can we say? Okay, you know today's weather, say x1 is rainy, and x2 is tomorrow's weather is say dry. is equal to the probability that today is dry and tomorrow is raining. But it doesn't mean this is equal to the probability of x1 today is raining and multiply the probability x2 is dry. This is a little different. So you can imagine that this is much weaker assumption. I can still construct like dependent random variables which are exchangeable, but it's not independent. So now we can take a look at one specific example. It's called Probabilistic experiment. It's a typical example that they're exchangeable but not independent. Not independent. So the random experiment is as follows. So given an urn with B0, black, and W0, white balls, we just sequentially draw balls. Right? So in the first step, I draw a ball at random from urn and just write down its color. And if the ball is black, then my outcome of random experiment is 1. Otherwise, my outcome of a random experiment is 0. Right? And then I switch to the next step, and then we supplement A balls of the same color. Then we'll go to next random variable xi plus 1. Does it make sense? So we can say if A equals to 1, what does this correspond to? It's something we're very familiar with. It's called sample with replacement, right? So you sample something and you replace it with the same color. It's called sample with replacement. If A equals to 0, that means when you sample it, you throw it out, you don't supplement, you don't supplement, you don't replenish. It's called sample without replacement, right? But in general, you can take arbitrary A balls. And it turns out that like arbitrary permutation for the values of the sequence of random variables, they won't change the probability mass. For example, this 1101, when we permute it as 1011, the density won't change. Unless the density is probability mass won't change. To see this point, we can calculate, right? So P1101 just means, okay, x1 is 1, x2 is 1, x3 is 0, x4 is 1, right? And P1011 means x1 is 1, x2 is 0, x3 1, x4 1. So you see, we random permute the set of values they take. The probability mass does not change. That's the definition of the exchangeability. Don't be confused at permutation of the random variables, because a lot of confusing notations of exchangeability, you just random permute the random variables. That's really confusing. So we can take a look at the first sequence, 1101. What is the probability? We can just record how many black balls and white balls in our urn, right? So at the beginning, we have a B0 and W0, right? So when x1 equals 1, then the probability will be B0 over B0 plus W0, right? But after that, we're going to supplement A balls. Remember, we draw a black ball and threw it out and supplement A balls. So actually, we increase the number of black balls in by A minus 1. Right? So we get B0 plus A minus 1. And W is still W. White balls are still W0. And now, in the second time, you sample, you draw a black ball again. Then the probability will be the ratio of the number of black balls, right? So it's B0 plus A minus 1 over the total number of balls. B0 plus W0 plus A minus 1. But now, we need to supplement another A minus 1 black balls. We throw one black ball and we supplement A balls to increase another A minus 1 balls. So now the total number of the black balls is 2 A minus 1 plus B0. and the number of white balls is W0. And then in the third time, you draw a white ball, then the probability will become W0 over the total number of the balls, right? And now you supplement the white ball this time. Remember, you throw one out, you supplement A white balls, you end up with increasing A minus 1 white balls. So now the white balls has W0 plus A minus 1, and then in the last sample, you draw the black ball again, so the probability will be the number of black balls, which is here, and plus the total number of the balls, right? So end up with the probability for this sequence of the random variable values. And then you can follow the same computation procedure to calculate another sequence of the random variable values, which is just the permutation of this, and it turns out to be the same. They are the same. You'll see that, okay, the product of the, although the numerator and denominator could change, but their product don't change. So they're exchangeable, but you can say it's actually x1, x2, x3, x4 are dependent on each other, right? The chance that you're taking a white ball or a black ball depends on the last outcome. Whether you draw a black ball or white ball, you actually have different number of balls for black and white colors, right? So here comes the definitive theory. Definitive theory tells us that if I have an infinite binary sequence, that means each variable in the sequence is either 1 or 0. It is exchangeable if and only if there exists a distribution function f on 0, 1. So distribution function is a CDF, cumulative density function, on 0, 1, such that for any finite n, the joint probability of x1, xn is equal to this integral. So let us look at what is the integrand here. Right? The integrand is first theta to the power of Tn, and the Tn is actually the summation of all n variables. That means the number of ones. Remember, x1, x2, xn are all binary variables. Their summation is just the count of ones. And multiplying with 1 minus theta to the power of n minus Tn. So this is actually a Bernoulli vector, right? And this df theta, so remember, df theta is the derivative of the CDF is essentially density function multiplying d theta, right? That means theta essentially can be considered as a variable. And p theta is its density. And we're doing the expectation for this, right? So p theta can be considered as a bar distribution, and theta corresponds to a latent random variable. And then we are curious about what's the distribution of theta, right? What is exactly p theta is, right? So according to the our precondition that our sequence is an infinite sequence, right? So we can show that if CDF is a distribution function over this average of the whole random variables in the sequence, and take the limit. So basically, you just average the first n random variables in the sequence, and then take a limit that n approaches to infinity. Roughly, can think of I do the average over the infinite sequence of the random variables, and the distribution f is the distribution of this average limit for average random variable. Does it make sense? So we can say theta actually is y. Because we're talking about df theta is theta, right? You can consider theta as some random variable, and the sample from the density also controlled by this CDF, right? As we just mentioned, like f is a distribution function, the CDF over the CDF of this average variable over the whole sequence. That means theta is actually has the same distribution over this with this average sequence average. But what is the parameter for theta? It doesn't matter. This is not something we want to dive into the details. But what does this theorem reflect is that we can consider, given theta, this conditional density is actually a Bernoulli likelihood, right? And then our drawn density, px1, pxn, is an integral of this conditional density multiplied with this prior and do the integral. That's actually a marginalization. Right? So you can see this is a Bernoulli likelihood, and we have the prior. This prior follows the distribution of this sequence average. Of course, it's limited. This reflects a hierarchical generation procedure. Right? So first, I'm gonna sample some theta from a prior distribution. And given theta, I sample x1, x2, x3 onto xn independently, identically distributed. Right? Because this likelihood is essentially n independent Bernoulli likelihood, right? Multiply n independent Bernoulli likelihood and that was this. So basically, the definitive theory reflects a hierarchical generation procedure that we first sample a latent random variable from its prior, although we do not know its prior, what is its prior. And then given the theta, we sample the n observations with IID ways. So now we can see how Bayesian philosophy is justified, right? Exchangeability is not too bad assumption. At least it's better than IID, right? So as long as you assume your sequence of observations or exchangeability, I can claim that there is an equivalent sample procedure. We need to first sample a latent random variable, and given latent random variable, we sample these observations. That means my assumption that God is rolling the dice is true, right? As long as the God is sampling exchangeable random variables. Any questions so far? So exchangeability is not only used for a justification of Bayesian modeling. It also very widely used in other designing Bayesian models. It is more flexible than IID, but obviously it's also restricted because you have to assume the symmetry of the probability density, right? When you do the random permutation of your values that the random variables can take, your density should not change. That is the requirement of the exchangeability, but sometimes it's quite restricted. For example, a very popular model is called latent duration allocation, widely used to extract topic words from text documents. Like your documents may contain several topics like politics, like entertainment, like military, those kind of things, and use topic models can extract set of words which represent each topic. But that model is based on exchangeability. Underlying their assumption, well, they assume, like for any document, you just randomly permutate the words. They have the same probability generated. as a human being, I strongly object to this, right? If you run from it, your words in a document, how should I read it, right? Unless I want to encrypt it. But sometimes even I put this seemingly strong restrictive assumption, it works pretty well. Here are a few popular models that is based on extensibility. This is a very classical paper related to directional allocation, and this is called mixed membership stochastic law models. It's used to model networks. Like how do you find the communities of the network according to the linkage information? It's a very classical model. And also this one, running function priors for exchangeable arrays with applications to graph and relational data, which tries to extend exchangeability, the concept of exchangeability to two-dimensional arrays or even multi-dimensional arrays. Like consider an array, a sequence of arrays are exchangeable, and we can define useful models on that. So now we have a walk through the uninformed T-prior. The philosophy is regarding Bayesian and versus frequentist, and also the exchangeability. And all those kind of stuff are stimulated from the debate or argument between Bayesian guys and frequentist guys. So I hope that you will know what's the core difference, what is the essential difference between Bayesian point of view and frequentist point of view. There's no right or wrong. Actually, they have like strong connections between the results generated from two groups of researchers. But we need to know the difference. And what is uninformed T-prior? That comes from objective Bayesian. I want to do things as objective as possible, like frequentist guys could do, but I still want to put it in a basic way. That's how the uninformed T-prior is motivated. And then what are the commonly used properties of a likelihood, like shift invariance, skew invariance, and how to derive the corresponding uninformed T-prior. And then what is Jeffreys prior? What is the advantage of Jeffreys prior? Because the advantage is that it is invariant to arbitrary translation invariance, but it does not mean it's perfect because it sacrifices some other properties in estimation of parameters. And then we introduce like reference pairs, and then exchangeability. What is the definition of exchangeability? What's the difference between exchangeability and the IID and the associated definitive theory? Definitive theory is not fully used to justify Bayesian philosophy. It is also very used for model assumption in Bayesian, in probabilistic models. So any questions so far? Okay, I think we still have like a few minutes, so I will just give a simple start for Bayesian decision theory, which we're gonna go through on next Monday. So there's nothing difficult here. We just need to look at one slice.
So you seem to favor the Bayesian point of view rather than the frequentist point of view. Is there how do you justify that view?
I said there's no right or wrong. It's your personal preference. I'm definitely a Bayesian guy.
Right.
But you can look at I can give you a few references. Like I'm kind of a neutral guy. I'm not strongly objective to frequentist point of view. But if you look at some even famous people who write a book, like Kevin Murphy's book in 2012, it's called Machine Learning and Probabilistic Perspective. At least the reference in my course webpage. You feel free to download and read it. If you look at it, it's funny that he tried to criticize frequentist every point of view. You see, he's like strongly objective to frequentist point of view. And if you like read those old books regarding like machine learning, so there's a very famous book. It's called Elements of Statistical Learning. Well, I don't like that paper, that book at all, because when I studied machine learning, I read that paper, I got full of headache. That probably is the major reason why I turned to Bayesian, because when I read Michael Jordan's slides, I feel it's so clear, so comfortable. Right? I don't know what notations used in that book. But in that book, they don't talk, they don't discuss anything regarding Bayesian. So everything is like you have a loss, you have a regularizer, you have to show some asymptotic consistency, whatever, blah 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 blah. And there's a famous book like to discuss the advantage of Bayesian in philosophy point of view. It's called, I forgot the name. It's the author is Hans. It's talk about like why you need to consider everything in a Bayesian perspective. It's very good book to me. Right? So if you're interested, you can take a look. Anyway, it's just a personal preferences. I won't force you to be a Bayesian. Okay, I think we do not need to really let's stop here and see you in next one.